Welcome everybody. This is PnP Weekly. It is 13th of March 2020, and it is episode 77. My name is Esa Juvonen. I'm a program manager from the OneDrive SharePoint platform team, and my co-host is Waldek. Let's show it to you first.
Hi everybody, my name is Waldek Mastegas. I am head of product at Rancor, and today we have a guest, Victor Villian. How are you, buddy?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And let's actually start, Victor, on you. And can you do a quick intro, who you are and what's your background around the cloud and where you come from?
Will do. So, Victor Villian, work for Avanon, a global innovation lead for Modern Workplace. Been in the SharePoint space for quite some time. SharePoint MVP for 10 years. So I got all these kind of glass thingies here. SharePoint Master, SharePoint Certified Architect, general SharePoint fan, spending most of my time today, though, with Microsoft Teams and the extensibility side of that. And
how? Well, that's actually an interesting topic, which we'll touch many times during.
Why move to Teams?
Yeah, why Teams? Why is the and obviously we have a long background. We've been doing MCM trainings and all of that together at some point. And then you come from a long-lasting SharePoint background. Why are you now concentrating on Teams? Which is a good thing, by the way.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I switched out SharePoint for Teams. SharePoint is still a big part of everything we do with Teams, but Teams open up other areas of interest, which I think is interesting. Bringing a lot of pieces in Office 3 or Microsoft 365 together. And it's an interesting concept of having the sort of an enriched collaboration interface where everything from SharePoint files, pages, sites, etc., combining that with conversations, bots, and integrations. So that's what I think the power of this is. And of course, I like to learn new stuff. That's the whole. That's why I'm in this business at all. And we have a lot of demand from clients right now about Teams, and specifically what's happened over the last few weeks. It's we're working furiously right now with all clients asking us to help with Teams, and once you started embracing Teams and starting working with that, you will get to that step where you see, okay, we want to do more than just chat and video and those kind of things and bring those kind of pieces together. So that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm focusing on quite a lot right now.
Yep. And in your case, it's also you're obviously an architect, so I think about the change management and adaption as well. Yeah. But then you've been also on the extensibility side of the Teams. Can you talk about that? What's your role related on extensibility if somebody's interested?
Exactly. Yeah. As you said, so Teams is, first of all, you start with the sort of a new glorified interface of Skype. So that's where you start. But you also the kind of culture and those kind of things, bring all that kind of together. But after that, as I said, you want to extend Teams. And that's what I think is fascinating with the platform. It's actually built from start to actually being extendable. And when I started doing that, sort of almost 3 years ago, when I had actually submitted for SharePoint Saturday Munich, I think it was, and I said, okay, let's do some Teams development session on that. And there was no tooling, almost no documentation or anything at that point in time. And the only thing we could do was tabs, bots could do sort of at that point in time. So I started building. I need to build demos and do that fast. So I started building a sort of Yeoman generator to generate my demos faster and make that a more interesting session. And from there, we created sort of the Yo Teams tab, was the original name of it, but now it's Yo Teams. So Yeoman generator for Teams applications. Yeah. And as I said, it's 3 years down the road. I've been doing updates sort of trying to sync with when there's new features from the Teams team and new extensibility sites there, etc. And I've been seeing quite good uptake over the last sort of 9 months or so. And it's a couple of hundred of Yo Teams application or scaffolded applications each week. So people are using the platform. I think that's extremely cool. I have some telemetry. I don't know how much they're being used, but at least people are running the generator and generating projects. And you can also even see on GitHub, people are actually using the NPM packages that's in there, etc., etc. And we have some great plans going forward as well. And the biggest announcement that we did a couple of weeks ago was moving this sort of from the Office Dev organization into the PnP organizations to have it more embraced by the community and having it more have more people involved in the project.
Yeah, really making sure that we get more visibility for the Yo Teams and more people involved, MVPs, non-MVPs, community members, and all of that. Have you seen an uptake related
Absolutely.
on the
so
interest?
We have quite a few. So if you go to aka.ms/Yo Teams, that's the GitHub repo. We keep the issues there, and the issues list is both issues but also feature suggestions. Since that transition, both we have a lot more followers, etc. on the repo, a lot of more new features, suggestions, some issues as well, and some interaction in general, I would say. So yes, since that PnP move with that sort of extra exposure, I think it's looking really good for the future, and we have had a community meeting a couple of weeks ago, planning out the version 3 of it, which will be taking a step back and see what we can fix and make better, and to make it a really great generator for everyone who wants to build Teams applications.
Yeah. What's your take on the? Sorry, Waldek. I'm just interested obviously jumping into questions. If you think about the success of SharePoint Framework, and SharePoint Framework introduced the Yeoman generator for the community, and we were able to apparently pretty nicely help on people to adapt the model. Has that helped out with the Yo Teams, and is that why the Yo Teams was created, or why we ended up doing that one?
The reason Yo Teams was created was, as I said, I needed to build demos faster, and there was no sort of wizard in Visual Studio or some templates for VS Code. There was some sort of complete samples, but then you had to re-engineer, refactor them completely, which took too much time. Yeah. So I needed to scaffold out stuff faster. That's the original intention for it. But then as time went along, sort of we built out, added more features to it, and received feedback from the community, what they wanted, etc. So sort of became the de facto standard. It's also now in the documentation, in the training materials for Teams, etc. So it's sort of the official, unofficial sort of generator for Teams applications, because there are no other. So that's where we are right now. And if you compare the SharePoint framework, I don't think Teams in the short and near short term will have the same kind of uptake as SharePoint has as an application platform. And the reason for that is, of course, SharePoint has a big legacy. There's thousands and gazillions of SharePoint developers out there. And SharePoint has a very the interface is very easily to extend in that way. Teams is more locked down, but also the difference between a Teams application and SharePoint application essentially run JavaScript inside SharePoint with some boundaries. But with Teams, you don't run anything inside Teams. A Teams application is essentially just a pointer to somewhere else, to a bot hosted in Azure or whatever you host that, a tab that's an iframe hosted somewhere else. So and I would say Teams application is very much lightweight. That's also why you can very easily just wrap a SharePoint page or the classic website you have and create a Teams application from that. So it's a bit different mindset on how you build these applications. But as I said, the statistics we see from the scaffolded products in Yo Teams, it's continuously increasing, and more people are actually generating stuff. And predominantly, it's actually tabs, what people do.
Yeah, at least for now.
And with that, like, do you see? So you said that in SharePoint, majority of applications is just script running on a page, right? And the benefit for that is that in that context, you don't need to deal with auth, which is like one of the main hurdles whenever you build anything. Like, first thing, how do I authenticate? Because like none of that thing is anonymous, so you have to authenticate because you can do anything. In SharePoint, you get it kind of for free because you are already on the page. Do you see that as a hurdle for anything you build in Teams, like that auth piece?
Absolutely. So, and historically, that's been one of the biggest issues. And as I said, yes, and tab, for instance, it's an iframe. So, how much fun it is to build an app with an iframe. When you want to get some real value of it, you have to do some integrations, right? And then you need to probably do some authentication to your backend systems, SAP, whatever, Salesforce, whatever it is, some kind of authentication there. And yes, it's not been 3 years down the road with sort of the Teams applications. It's only the last sort of year where they actually moved on and moved both the bot framework, made it easy with authentication, and also now last a couple of months ago, they released the Azure AD single sign-on tabs as well. There's been ways of doing that, but to do that, and Paul Schaeflein is expert in this area, and he and I had a workshop at the SharePoint in Wiesbaden last year, where we actually talked quite a lot about how to do those kind of single sign-on. But you need to understand OAuth to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not for the if you're beginner and developer, and the first task you probably get as a developer, you need to authenticate and get stuff from the graph.
Yeah. And all of that should be.
OAuth, and of course, it's good to learn that, but with the Azure ADS tabs, it's essentially configuration. So it's much easier now, and that's what we added in the 2.13 version of Yo Teams, support for that. So essentially you go through the wizard and everything will be set up, and you just need to configure Azure AD for that, and then you can get access to graph fairly easy.
Yeah, so making it super easy. I think that's always the hurdle. It was the same with so dinosaurs speaking. It was same with the SharePoint add-in model. I still remember back in 2014 in the SharePoint conference in Las Vegas in the Venice hotel, wasn't it? And there was the most popular session was Andrew Connell's deep dive on SharePoint OAuth, and it's actually super weird because as a developer you should not have to worry about it. It should just work. You do not need to understand that level of details. Obviously, yes, sure. If you want to be a specialist, yes, you can deep dive, but to be able to have a true adaptation on a developer platform, all of that basic just have to work and make it as easy as possible so that people can concentrate on solving the business problem and the functionality problem. And it's always this classic hurdle with everything what we introduce. So
I agree, absolutely. So I remember the beta version for the MCM where we had the app model the first time when you were trying to write the material, so that's and learning at the same time. That was horrible times.
It was. Yeah.
But I guess
anyway.
It is this interesting thing, right? Because on one hand, the assumption is exactly as you say, it should just work. It shouldn't be simple. Yeah. So as such, I think that to big part, docs don't discuss it because docs assume it will be simple. It will be, and then in reality, it isn't. And then you end up like, I have to do this, but there are no docs. Like in all these years, why there are no docs explaining which permissions you need in SharePoint to manage web versus read something? Well, because for a long time it was irrelevant. Like server-side model, you didn't care because it was a user who either could do it or not. But then you build an app that has to request these permissions up front, and like, okay, so what do I need? And it's basically trial and error. Does it work? No. Does it work? No. And basically, right? So it brings us to this point where assumptions are being made. Well, it should be simple, so let's not spend any time on that. But then it isn't, and then you're kind of in a limbo state. Like, okay, so how do we go about it?
Yeah, exactly. You don't, as you said, I think you need to understand the foundation of this. Is super important, but not all the nitty-gritty details and all the protocols data being sent back and forward, and how to get do it manual with just REST calls or
you
raw
mean a handshake and a socket and all of that, like building.
It's good if you know that kind of thing. You should probably understand that flow chart, but as a developer, you want to focus, as you said, Vesa, on the business objectives of this, and compare what you said, well, like about sort of what we did on the server side. Then we do so if admin, then do this, and we had full control of that. We can't do that.
What do you mean, if admin? Run with elevated privileges, and you were always an admin.
But we can do that in JavaScript because someone will be able to open up the developer console and do whatever they want if you give that application group .read write all permissions.
Sure.
Or you will pull in external script that does that for you automatically.
Now coming back on the let's say the adaptation of the development and extensibility and things. We talked about this one actually last week as well with Brett Lonsdale from Lightning Tools. That it's interesting to see that, and obviously when users are adapting the teams, they first need to get used to the basics and out-of-the-box functionalities, and then they start thinking then, okay, so what if we would actually surface LOB or whatever systems in the teams, and then build the digital dashboard or whatever we want to call that. Is that the typical process what you see for the companies you work with as well, so that they start using teams, it takes a while, and then at a certain point they start contacting you, Avanade or whatever, that, okay, so how do we get more stuff in here?
Exactly. So it's sort of two scenarios. So that being the sort of, if you look at knowledge worker, information worker, and that's what's happened, because they want that sort of a conversational interface and work with that. And then they want to they see the store, of course, there's applications in there. They might want to start using them, but then they understand, okay, let's bring in our customer data or product data and those kind of things. So that's typical. The other area is what we see as well is where they are large populations of first-line workers, where they want to roll out teams, and you don't roll out teams for them to do conversational kind of stuff. You roll out teams to them so they can do actionable stuff all the time. So that's where we actually see a lot of integrations and a lot of almost custom applications built on the Teams platform, because you get the benefit of having that. Take a bot integration, for instance. If you roll it out through Teams, that's one application. You, from an IT point, just need to deploy to your devices. Everything within that is contained and secure and compliant. So it's very easily for an IT admin or the IT teams to actually, they approve Teams application, and then they have all the security thing around that they need to deploy it safely to all these devices. So those are the kind of two main scenarios we see right now. And I think that first line worker, store work, whatever you want to call it, that's a super interesting scenario. And I know Microsoft is betting hard on that as well, since it's a large population of users. And hopefully shortly we have some really cool cases actually we're building right now. Unfortunately, I can't talk about them here right now, but we do some really nice stuff to empower those first line workers on the Teams platform. And I think it's super exciting.
Yeah,
because that was exactly the thing I wanted to ask. Like, why would you deploy custom application on Teams that you want to give to somebody who works who is a first line worker, where you could just give them a mobile app or a single page app or progressive web, so what is the benefit of that? And from what I understood, it's that compliance shell around it that you get, because it's a part of Teams, so it basically participates already in everything around Teams, right?
Yes, exactly. And you still might want to have so there's a lot of features coming in Teams for first-line workers, such as the walkie-talkie features and those kind of things. And you get those, and you have the conversation, you have the Teams, you have the grouping concept, you have the calling, the notifications, for instance. And if you don't have to do those kind of things if you use the Teams application. And that's sort of the power of this. Instead of course, if you want to have complete custom control, then you need to do a Xamarin app. But the problem with that, you probably need to deploy 2 apps then, and you need to sign into 2 of them. So all of that actually works with Teams, and you can, if a user gets locked out, it's so easy to lock out that application and remove it, and remove data and whatnot.
How do you, on that topic actually, because this is if you think about Microsoft, there's kind of 2 main organizations. There's the Azure side of the house, and then there's the Microsoft 365. And for Azure side of the house, it's pretty obvious what is the partner, let's say, promise. It's a set of tools, you'll build your own. For Microsoft 365, the partner, let's say, promise and opportunity has been kind of more fluffy, so to say. But on the topic which you just covered, how do you see this actually as a partner? You're leading a lot of developers in Avanade, you're giving them the guidance. Why would partners need to get invested on the Microsoft 365, the platform? What is the partner ecosystem?
Absolutely, I think there's so many opportunities there. It's different from when if you look back at the SharePoint portal, it was 19-year celebration or something like that for
19,
SharePoint 21, 2001. So it's a different kind of way. I think those portals are still there. We're still building intranets or portals or digital hubs or whatever you're going to call it. There's a lot of ISVs, etc. And it's a big market still there for those kind of communications. But also the reason I think where I ended up in Teams and why I'm using that, because that's a platform that covers all of that. Everything from the power apps, where you have the low code, no code, to the really hardcore stuff, where I would say it's 99.9% Azure. The only thing we do with Teams essentially there, or in Microsoft 365, is sort of the manifest file that points to the Azure web app or the graph integration we might be using. But the rest is pure Azure development, Cosmos DB, AI service, cognitive services and whatnot. So it's a super interesting way. So for me, I don't see it as the Microsoft 365 cloud and the Azure cloud. For me and many clients, it's the same. And what ties it together is the identities in Azure AD, of course. But it's an interesting partner opportunity, and I think previously the partner opportunity of BPOS, if we go back to that day, that was SharePoint only. There's so many more areas now, and we've been seeing quite a few new customers, both focusing on sort of the low code, no code, Power App side, but also building SharePoint framework solutions, Teams applications, and we see a lot more interesting startups coming up with everything from a bot that we integrate into Teams to someone taking an application we've been using quite a lot right now in the work from home, remote working kind of scenario is Mural, which is a very interesting design thinking application that we've been using for quite some time. And they have an integration in Teams. So we can have the conversation, we can have the meeting, etc., but also work in Teams. So those are the kind of opportunities for both ISVs, but also SIs in this case.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. And then one more question on the technology side, and then let's go to the articles and just conscious about the time as well. Now, you've been leading the Yo Teams, let's say design and development and all of that, and then you can create Microsoft Teams tabs using this Azure hosted application model or whatever hosted, right? Because it can be hosted from anywhere. How do you see then the role of the SharePoint framework based Microsoft Teams personal applications and tabs coming on the link? Is it a confusing thing? Is this how do you position that different side of this?
It might be confusing, but I think this is also a good thing. So first of all, let's take a step back for those who doesn't know. So for each SharePoint framework, you can create a web part, and that web part is running on a page, but also you can either sort of create a page with the dashboard with a lot of web parts and add that as a tab in Teams. That's one way of doing it. But you can also directly publish sort of a SharePoint framework web part as an application in Teams. So that's a really good, if you already know SharePoint framework, you are sort of greenfield development. We need to do integrations with an Azure AD and secured service and whatnot, then absolutely, by all means, and that's the application you want to do, then by all means use SharePoint framework and use the built-in, as you mentioned, Waldek, about the sort of, you get a lot for free when using SharePoint framework with authorization and authentication and stuff.
Hosting,
so exactly, hosting is very good, but it's service client side only, so not server side.
Correct.
The reason why you want to use Yo Teams is if you might be new, you don't know SharePoint framework, you want to use exactly whatever kind of stuff you don't want to host it in SharePoint. You want to use Angular and Jade as server-side rendering and those kind of things, and host it on Node. Then you should use Yo Teams because you have full flexibility in doing that. But also in those cases when you want to, for instance, integrate a bot to your solution or messaging extensions, which are server-side code essentially. Yep. So that's the two big differences, but you can combine them. And that's one of the feature suggestions we have and ideas for V3 as well, being able to import a SharePoint framework projects. You can use that web part as a tab in your Yo Teams application. So I think, we will see a blend of this going forward.
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Cool. Let's do some articles. We have 60 minutes before the hard stop on the hour. And then get back on the screens in a second. So let me share my screen. Tell me when you get it.
Yep. You can see it.
Excellent. So the first one, people have been reporting a lot of, let's say, that our cloud is getting slower and slower. And this is the latest update. I think this came out from the weekend. And I think this is the most mind-blowing number we've seen for a while.
It's insane.
So it's a 775% increase of cloud services.
That's pretty huge. And at least for now, the most usage growth is actually in the EMEA area, and that's also because of the stage where we are in this enforced social distancing process. But 775% increase. The interesting part with this one, obviously, yes, we're working on making everything work as fast as they were and even better in the future, but it's not like we had 775% more hardware capacity just lying around. So it's surprisingly, it's surprisingly hard of trying to find where can we get new computers, because even though it's cloud, there are computers behind the scenes. So
somebody's computer at the end.
Exactly. But it is huge, and it's just mind blowing to see these numbers. And obviously, Teams is a awesome tool. We're recording all of this through Teams as well, but 44 million daily users on the daily users. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and you actually been able to experience this over the last few weeks as well. So even in this meeting, I saw also the video quality is a little bit reduced now, and a couple of other things. Actually, I was having a training a couple of days ago and was deploying a Teams tab, and I was throttled. The service is so pegged right now in certain times, but an hour later it actually worked. So. But you will experience those kind of things, and there's also a couple of messages in the 365 message center around this. But I think it's holding up fairly well anyways, and I think it's just, we need to throttle it
considering the growth. And so there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. So a lot of our efforts right now from Microsoft's side is actually prioritizing our resources to concentrate on how can we optimize, and what are the things what we can do. Like Victor said, reducing the quality of the video is the one way of reducing bandwidth requirements, because it's not just Microsoft, it's also the telecommunication companies are seeing a massive uptake on the usage. So
I think and also the same thing with streaming
Netflix,
services. With you mentioned the brand name. I especially tried to.
Okay, fair point.
Yeah, so there are streaming services, online games, like basically everything that uses a huge amount of bandwidth. Try to make it available, let's say, at a lesser quality for everybody, as opposed to make it available for a few and then unavailable for everybody else. Right? I think that is the balancing act.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us as well if we think about as architects and learn stuff from this, even though Microsoft is throttling a lot of stuff, but assume you're building a Teams application or something that's being integrated, ensure that you are using cloud services that are scalable, that your solution is scalable and not depending on something that can't scale, etc. So I think this hopefully all solution architects and designers out there can sort of reflect on this and also learn from this experience, because I think we will be this is inevitable to happen, that we will be working this much from home and remote working, and this will has speeded up that process, and this is the future we will have going forward. And all three of us are we are already the way we've been working for years now is called the quarantine, right?
Exactly. It is a Monday, right?
But a lot of people, all of this is new, and we need to probably design and think about our services and solutions. We build everything from SharePoint framework stuff to Teams applications on how to design them for this future.
So in other words, you're trying to say that in SPFX, it's not okay to include all of the external scripts in bundles?
Think about optimization. That's the conclusion out of this. And this, by the way, this article is in 2 times. It is in Azure blog, and then it's from the Jared as well, as a note, making sure that people actually see this. So cross-posting from the multiple different platforms. Now, what else did we release? This one was from official blog post as well, from the security side, alternative ways for security professionals and IT to achieve modern security controls in today's unique remote work scenario. So basically guidance and ideas and recommendations from Microsoft related on governing the work, making sure that the security and everything is up to date. I think whatever happened is obviously sad, and luckily, at least in the cloud, the maturity level was good enough to deal with this situation, so to say. So there is already plenty of control. There's the DLP. There's this way of governing the things. If this would have happened in BBOS timeframe, this situation would have been much more difficult. So BBOS what was the BBOS? The business productivity
online suite.
Online suite, yes.
Yeah, and then this is, as we talked about, sort of the request for Teams right now is super high on us, and a lot of people come asking about that. But at the same time, security is just as important right now.
Yeah.
People want to understand what they have, and finally, it might actually be on their agenda, because they need to start that move to the cloud. And thanks to Azure and Microsoft 365, it's you can do it fairly easy as well. But there's some things you need to think about, of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Then this is from the Brad McCabe from the SharePoint blog. SharePoint mobile app will now allow admins to customize their tenant theming and branding. So Victor is clearly happy.
Yeah.
And this is basically happening. Oops, that's not a. Let me actually zoom in. So this is happening from the Office 365 organization customization view, and you can control those settings. Then will be applied also in the mobile. So
yeah,
that's
the only
cool.
remark I have here, if you already set custom theme that will work, the only thing that you need to think about is sort of the logo you have. If typically you have most likely uploaded JPEG or PNG, that will not work. You need to have an SVG file for the logo to actually work in the mobile app.
Scale. Yeah.
But you can easily change your existing PNG file to an SVG file, and then.
Well, probably somebody somewhere in company has an SVG because it's often like vector-based images because they can scale, right? So it's probably somewhere there. You just need to find the person who has it.
Absolutely. Now, this one was interesting from weekend. I think it was weekend. No, Thursday actually already. I saw it on weekend. So Slack is working on integrating with rival Microsoft Teams for calls, as CEO Stuart Butterfield. What's with this all about? Can we briefly summarize article? And why is it
I think it just makes sense. So, of course, I think it's a good thing that Slack and Teams I think it's good with rivalry in between these Microsoft and Slack. But I don't like that they are in silos. And it would be great if we could get sort of federation or some kind of way to at least have calls between them, or not necessarily Teams and conversations, but at least calls between them, so just as we can have with Teams, with external federation, with other tenants or other even Skype consumer and those kind of things. So I think this is a good thing, and I hope to see more of this going forward.
So for whom would it be interesting, do you think?
So I work with I know you at Rencor previously used Slack, for instance. You might still use that, and I predominantly use Teams. And why should I have two clients and two identities and those kind of things? I think it's a good thing. The world is different nowadays, and we communicate and collaborate across the borders and across organizations much more than previously.
And hopefully this actually, we've seen this in the past as well quite often. Well, it happens both ways. So the business decisions like these drive also decisions in consumer side, and then consumer side drives business. Because one of the things is that, at least personally, I have like 27 different apps and things which are beeping and sending messages, and everybody's using whatever they want to use.
Yeah, exactly.
What if we would have a unified federal way of sharing the messages across whatever app you're using? So the app itself is the differentiator. Yeah, that's
that would be crazy.
Mind-blowing. Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, we have it already. It's called email.
Sure. Let's not go back in that. Now, a few other articles. So Yo Teams, there's a small thing, by the way, that the images, we're still fixing images, or Victoria is fixing images after the movement of the PnP organization, but basically now part of the Microsoft 365 PnP open source and community side of the house. And the Yo Teams is available here. The documentation is currently in the wiki site, right? But and obviously it's part of the Teams training packages, and we'll reference that in the notes as well. But we're in plans of getting, is it MK Doc version?
Yes.
Of the documentation.
MK Docs, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you have any ideas or comments, etc., go in there and file an issue or feature request. And you can also go into the projects and see what's in the pipe for V2, which is the in-flight project, and also V3, which is the sort of the next big thing. Yeah. We are currently in preview for 2.13 with the Azure AD SO tabs, and quite a few updates as well.
And for those who are interested, we're going to do a live demo of single sign-on applications in this week's community call.
Exactly.
So that's pretty cool.
Nice.
So join on that one on Thursday. Thursday, it's a normal Thursday call. Anyway, other things, CLI, new version of CLI. Waldek, do you want to do a quick summary on what?
Absolutely. So every month we release new version of CLI. This month we had updates around reporting. We have new command SPFX Doctor, which is a command that allows you to check whether your machine has everything in place for you to work with specific version of SPFX. Reporting, I mentioned that, add Microsoft Graph subscription, so you can basically read up the release that we have done, what it has. And another interesting thing is that last week we got released on the repo GitHub discussions. So that allows us to have to have discussions in repo. And with that, we moved away from the Gitter application, and we have everything now in single place.
What's your, so this is a setting in the repo level, right? To enable that in repo.
Not yet. So currently preview is closed. You have to apply for that. We've done that. We've been included. So it is enabled for us, but at some point it will be available to everybody. And yes, it will be a repo level setting. Yeah.
Yep. So how do you feel? Is it working? Is it, how does it feel like is it replacing Gitter truly? Is it more functioning?
So yes, I think the benefit of that is that everything is in single place, and then you can
more
link
like
between the issues discussion. Sorry.
It's more like a forum rather than a discussion, in my opinion, or compared to sort of Gitter, which is a chat, and this is more forum topic oriented,
structural.
Yeah.
Yes and no. So the one the benefit that we see here is that it's easier, like comparing, for example, this to Gitter. Gitter is just an endless stream.
Yeah,
and everybody asks their stuff, and it's basically like IRC, right? Like you cannot really find imagine you want to ask something. There is no easy way for you to search through all that. So you will probably ask something that might have been already asked and answered in a past. So here you can more easily find this. Also, it's easier
that's what I'm saying.
To keep things here in place, right?
Yeah, this is almost, as you can see here, as an answered, unanswered conversation. So it's more that kind of topic oriented rather than where Gitter might be sort of more chatty. More informal kind of things. Yes, so
exactly.
I would say it's not a direct replacement for Gitter or that kind of chat. It serves a different purpose.
Exactly, right. So Gitter, like we use that in CLI for two things. Like one, that is the back channel for maintainers to talk amongst ourselves. Exactly as you say, like this, like basically things that are just a chat, or like there is not always a topic about it. And then there was another thing, which was the public facing side of it, where we would allow people to ask stuff, we would announce things. So the public side of it is now implemented here. And then the back channel for maintainers, that is still in Gitter.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Right? So we didn't remove it yet. Yeah.
How do you see sort of this could be a replacement for sort of the endless discussions on that issue list? Sometimes an issue turns into a conversation. Do you see this should be replaced that, or how do you see that?
Yes. So for us, it's two things, right? Because oftentimes, like people will ask stuff, and that is not an issue because maybe they need help. So that doesn't. So that allows us to split like real issues and the things we want to work on as command ideas, enhancements, improvement, bugs, and separate it from things like how do I do action? Because then if you ask that issue is closed and it's gone and it's like not easily like people don't typically search for stuff. They just asking. Whereas here it's more visible, and you can also upvote things, meaning they will go up. So the most useful, most helpful things will end up on top being visible first.
Yeah. Cool. Can you convert the discussion into an issue or vice versa?
You can convert issue to a discussion, but not the other way around. Okay. And when you have discussion, you can link issue to a discussion.
Yeah, because you had down there upgrade from ADAL to MSAL, for instance. That could I see be an issue or a feature request. So you could
at some point, yes. Yeah, exactly, right. So first, like somebody might have an idea, discuss it or ask stuff, but then at some point where we arrived at a concrete point, then we can create related issue with a spec.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Cool. Now, well, like if you had a hard stop, and you need to drop.
I will stick for 3 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So good discussion. We're always running out of time. How to remove folder tab from channel from João Ferreira. So if something is happening, how do you actually manage these things and how do you fix that? Good article on also using the Teams graph APIs. Teams has a pretty decent graph API.
You can do it in CLI.
You could do it in CLI as well.
Absolutely. Or PowerShell. There is also in PowerShell for Teams, right? There are commandlets for
that is true. That is true. Which is basically using graph APIs behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Which are, however, slightly limited still comparing what you can do in the UX. So we would at least personally, I would always love to have the parity between an API.
The parity, absolutely.
But again, we don't have it in SharePoint either. So yeah, so it is what it is. So.
Well, actually, nowadays, it's the other way around. Like there are so many APIs from the past because we gathered them over the course of 19 years now.
Okay, yeah, exactly. That's yeah. Anyway, Alex had a good blog article, support Microsoft Teams in a SharePoint framework solution. So one way of doing this, so how to support those teams and make the coloring and all of that work properly. So pretty okay. Or good article there. Mikael Svensson, searching with Office 365 groups or team content, really around what is the queries and how do you target the search on those topics. So Mikael is working behind the scenes on these APIs, so it's good that we're getting that stuff recorded as well.
Search, you roll the dice and see if you get the results.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I just didn't say it out loud. Thank you, Victor. So from Paolo, he has a really nice series now, tenant properties with PnP. I think this is an episode 7 on the PnP series. So this is really nice series on teaching how to use PnP efficiently. And behind the scenes, well, because that actually simplifies the code enormously. So really easy to read and store. And as an example, the tenant properties. This one was from Sergey Sergeyev and overclockers on how to significantly speed up the Gulpser command. I haven't actually read this through within a thought, but I think Waldek, you commented this. It's like
yes, it's basically repaves the Webpack config. It repaves the whole thing, basically making it as efficient as it can be, flowing things like incremental change, incremental builds. All of that is in there, and that isn't available out of the box. So it's based on the measurement that he has done, which you see here, like you see 10-fold improvements, which is a lot.
Yeah. Maybe we should have a look on this.
You should have considered it.
Yeah, I'll pass it to the engineering team, absolutely. So we'll have a look on this one. So pretty significant improvements, absolutely.
Yes.
And then this one is from John Klein, retention in SharePoint Online, where, what, and how. Really important things. Once again, just recapping with the discussions which we had Tracy a few weeks ago. The basics is super important, and the fact that luckily people are blocking that stuff as well, because it's not about the technical nuances and details. It's all about understanding what can we do out of the box and then how can we extend that if needed. So basically good summary on the options on there. Now let me actually close the presentation. And any last words? What are we guys doing this week? Any interesting points?
I will be working with Teams. So
in Teams,
I'm working on
I will be working from home. So.
Yeah, working from home on a paper actually on how the future will look like after this pandemic and the aftermath of that. So that is what I'm researching this week. Super interesting. Yeah,
that is interesting. Absolutely. Also, I will be doing less interesting things. On Wednesday, I'll be doing Rancor webinar about governance of O365. So I'm doing the latest preps on that. Other than that, we will have another preview release of CLI at the end of the week, so we'll review. I think we've just done a release and we're now already at 20 PRs.
Yep.
So it's like we get few of them gone and then we get another chunk. So this is really great to see like how many people we have contributing to it. Yeah,
that's the beauty of open source, and really when the open source works, it works this well. And I think that's definitely what we've seen in the past with the PnP as well. It takes time, and with CLI, it's a good example. It takes time.
It's rinse and repeat.
Moving and rinse and repeat, and then suddenly, poof, then you have a positive platform, which is like I can't keep up with this thing.
Exactly. But I mean, for a big part, it's very hard because like many of us are devs at heart. And it's such like, what is the first thing that we do? We hack code, and you hack away, you build, but that doesn't necessarily enable others to help you. So to help others to help you, you have to get out of your own head and basically come up with issue list, feature list, like what are the areas for improvement? Because if people have 1 or 2 hours off and they want to help, they will either spend this hour or 2 hours to find out in your code what they could do, and then the time is gone by the time they can help, or they will go to your issue list, pick like, okay, what is the first good issue, this, and do it, and you will have a PR at the end of the time, right? So, yeah, but it requires you this thinking, like, how can I help others to help me?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually, I think that's definitely the key. How can I make it as easy as possible for others to help me, so that I can actually reduce the workload and I can concentrate on, again, maybe on the code. But
or we can do more
together. Yeah, absolutely. That's how we scale, and also trusting the others when they're contributing, and because if you will become as the bottleneck, yeah, that's it. That doesn't scale.
At the end of the day, you will get a PR that you will review or just accept it kindly. But I mean, there are things in place how to go about it, right? But it's just the fact that, like, you really have to think about it. It's an explicit choice. Like, you have to do it. It's not going to happen by itself.
Yeah. And in your case, sorry for taking one more minute on that one. Like a CLI is a really good example. You also scaled the team. So there's a Gary Trinder and Velin Georgiev helping with the coordination, and it's basically just making the team and scaling the things to a next level, so we can actually achieve better things.
Because the more people contribute, like the more people you have to review it, think about the backlog, think about other areas, and maybe it's the downside that we have, that we carve out a big piece of the cake, right? Our ambition is to cover all of the Microsoft 365, which is a big thing, because it's Power Platform, it's Azure, it's SharePoint, it's Exchange, it's OneDrive, it's Skype. So somebody has to pay attention to, like, okay, what's going on in all these areas, and what can we add, what people need, right? So just to pay attention to that, you could just say, oh, well, that is an FTE by itself. And then we also need to have backlog review, PRs. Like, it's a lot of work, but if one really push that wide, like, that makes it clear to me, like, what is the effort, for example, on the Microsoft Graph side, which is also the same thing. It covers everything. And then they have, like, so they need to keep track what the different teams are doing, what people need first, how do they spend their resources for all the docs, prioritize, like, and there is just a handful of folks, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Anyway, I think that's it for now. I have plenty of stuff on my table, so let's not actually go through. Just trying to catch up. It's just mind-blowing. And the last weeks has been just wow. And then doing the homeschooling on the side as well. It's just, it's really, really hard. But I think it's hard for everybody. And we'll adjust and we'll adapt and we'll learn from this. And that's the number one thing. But I think that's it for now. So, or did Waldek, you are about to say?
Yeah, I wanted to ask like one more thing. What do you find more challenging, SPO or SPFX development, or third grade math?
That's a good question. We're doing second grade math, so it's not math challenging yet. So okay.
It's gonna come there, yeah.
But it is an interesting. So doing the math as an example, trying to find a ways of explaining the technical details, in this case the math thingy, in an understandable way for a second grade student. It is a really interesting challenge. So how do you simplify, how do you adapt, and how do you explain the things in a multiple different ways? Because that's what we need to do as a technology, in technology as well. You can't go to talk to a normal end users, normal end users. Normal
people. You can go to talk to normal people.
Exactly.
Technical
talk to him about access tokens and refresh tokens and those kind of things.
Exactly. I think it's the same skill set which you need to adapt. Yeah. But okay, I think that's it. So we'll be back within a week. Thank you, Victor. Awesome discussion. We'll get you back definitely in here. And thank you for volunteering during the demo later this week in the community.
Absolutely, on Thursday.
Yeah. And the recording will go live tomorrow, Tuesday. Well, those people who are watching this anyway. So it's Tuesday anyway. So
it's going to be Thursday, April the 2nd?
Yeah, April the 2nd, 2020.
Not an April Fool's joke.
No. Yeah. And well, so it's recorded. It's going to be in a YouTube channel as well, and we've already agreed multiple other ones in the future. But I think that's it. So thank you, Victor. Thank you, Waldek. Stay safe. We'll be back in a week.
Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.